Yes, it's true. You can stop Google or Apple or Samsung from watching everything you do. The first step is a lot easier than you think, and that's changing the operating system on your phone, a process that only takes a few minutes. If you're still watching, then you're either considering switching or you've already decided to switch. You want a phone that isn't silently tracking you. Our goal is to provide information that can help you decide, whether that's deciding to try the switch or which alternative operating system to try first. We'll help you choose among multiple Google-free Android-based operating systems. Yes, Android variants are your only practical choices because there aren't any alternative operating systems for Apple hardware. But iPhone users shouldn't bail here because we have something for you. So let's get into the details and build a clear map to help you decide. We'll also explain why we recommend 3 specific Android flavors by following these 3 guidelines. First, the implementation must significantly reduce secret surveillance. That's our top priority. Second, the provider should be stable and delivering regular updates because we won't sacrifice cybersecurity. And third, the process should require minimal technical experience. Anyone should be able to do this. The final map will provide an at-a-glance overview. It might seem confusing at first, but we'll build it one step at a time. For people who hate suspense, here are the 3 variants we recommend. EOS with Murena, Eode OS with Eode Tech, and Graphene OS. We're going to unpack this for you, like the dual names, and describe the similarities and differences so you can decide which suits your needs best. We'll also explain why some variants are excluded. So let's build a map that shows how we came to these recommendations. We'll do that in steps for clarity because a one-pager gets a little crowded. The Android operating system is at the center of things. Because its name is a mouthful, you'll often see the project referred to by the initials AOSP. AOSP is nominally an open source codebase used by all providers of Android phone operating systems. AOSP is managed by a consortium led by Google, so really Google calls the shots. The purple line in the diagram connecting AOSP to Google Android is intended to reflect that direction of control. The diagram also shows operating system variants connected to AOSP by blue lines. That includes commercial variants used by corporations like Samsung, OnePlus, and Xiaomi, but also community open source variants like Calyx, CyanogenMod, and Graphene. The blue line represents the concept derived from and closely tracking the AOSP codebase. The Samsung, OnePlus, and Xiaomi variants are in this diagram not because those Android variants are desirable or available to you, but to show how Google's influence over Android extends around the world. Now, both Calyx and CyanogenMod are marked with red shaded backgrounds because they've had troubles. You can do an internet search for Calyx OS and read about theirs, but their OS updates required for practical security are on hold at this time. You can also read about the history of CyanogenMod. But the important bit of information is that a variant called Lineage OS was hard forked from CyanogenMod in 2016, when the project was shuttered. The red line between Lineage and CyanogenMod represents a fork event. Forked projects can still track the core codebase, but are more loosely tied to it. Last, there are 2 variants forked from Lineage OS on our map. Those are EOS and Eode OS. You may hear me use the name Murena when discussing EOS because, well, it's easier to say, and also because it's the seller of phones and for-pay services for EOS that you may want. There are a lot of factors to consider, so we provide annotations that might help your decision process. First, we indicate the country where the variant management is based. That management could be a corporation, a nonprofit, an individual, or a highly distributed group. 2 variants are in mainland China, 1 in South Korea, 2 in France, or the European Union if you prefer, and 1 in Canada. They're marked with the corresponding country's flag. Variants managed by distributed projects are marked with the world globe. Calyx OS is managed by a New York-based 501c3, which is a US nonprofit organization, and Graphene is managed by a Canadian nonprofit, so we give them a peace dove. Because Calyx OS is not currently in a stable place and CyanogenMod has been out of the picture for a while, they have tombstone annotations in their labels. Variants that have a revenue model are tagged with a bag of dollars. Your currency might vary. Variants that follow the free and open source software philosophy, FOSS, are marked with a FOSS logo. We use a smaller logo for variants that are more closely controlled by a single organization. Lastly, the variants that have a strong primary focus on security are tagged with the usual padlock icon. To be clear, that does not mean the other variants aren't concerned with security, just that it is not their primary driving principle. There are other variants not shown here that technical people might be interested in trying out, for example, Proton AOSP. However, Proton AOSP has not been updated since 2022 because it's not actively supported. It's not within our guidelines. If you wonder why Lineage OS is not on the list, even though it is the parent of 2 recommendations, it's because the Lineage base project doesn't provide default access to sandboxed Google services. Without that feature, it doesn't meet our low friction requirement. You might also ask about the Android operating system project. Given that all things flow from it, it has the opposite issue. AOSP uses the core Google Play services, Google's silent data collection infrastructure, with no opt-out option, so it fails our first requirement to reduce secret surveillance. The 3 variants that meet our guidelines have been shaded in light green backgrounds. The first 2, EOS and EODE OS, have similarities and differences that require some explaining. Both operating systems rely on an open source framework called MicroG to achieve independence from the invasive Google Play service. Both of these operating systems are free to install and are considered open source by their organizations because almost all of the source code is publicly available. However, EOS includes proprietary binaries and EODE includes proprietary apps, so they don't get full-sized FOSS logos. They also both have an associated for-profit organization. That would be Murena for EOS and EODE Tech for EODE OS. But these for-profit companies offer different types of services. Murena offers replacements for a wide variety of services offered by Google, while EODE Tech is offering enhancements to privacy and security features present in the base operating system. Another difference is in the separation of the for-profit organization and the operating system. While EODE Tech is the manager of the EODE OS, EOS is managed by the E Foundation, not by Murena, the for-profit organization. However, Murena is closely tied to the E Foundation, given that the president of the E Foundation is also the founder of Murena. The third really interesting option is Graphene OS. It's fully open source and driven by a nonprofit foundation that is dedicated to and passionate about super strong, hardcore security. Where EOS and EODE OS use the open source MicroG framework to isolate Google apps, Graphene goes further by running all things Google as a non-privileged user. They also have a load of other security features, like multiple profiles. Those are really separate logins with partitioned permissions. No kidding. If you have concerns that some hostile group is trying to get into your phone because something on that phone could threaten someone's life or liberty, Graphene is your choice. Graphene OS doesn't at this time have an associated for-profit or revenue model to fund commercial support, so there is a more self-support required. But that will not be a showstopper for anyone who needs the greatest possible digital defenses. You might be wondering about our third principle, which is requiring minimal technical experience. Well, all 3 of these recommendations have automated installers that can do all the work for you. So that's how we narrowed down our recommendations. At this point, you may be asking, how do I choose? That's a complex question because it's a little like picking a car. Here are some broad brushstrokes based on personal experience. Choose Murena and EOS if you want simplicity and convenience that looks and feels a lot like an iPhone, and has a curated app store. Murena offers several services for a monthly subscription that replace Google equivalents. This is as close to a drop-in replacement as there is today. Choose Eodia OS if you're an Android devotee or prefer a clean, minimalist Android experience. It has a generic Android flavor and comes pre-installed with the F-Droid and the Aurora Store. Eodia has for-pay offerings like enhanced ad blocking and content blocking for parents. Third, choose Graphene OS if you're okay with using a Pixel hardware, at least today, and your concerns are first and foremost about personal privacy and cybersecurity. Graphene is the only alternative OS recommended by privacyguides.org and provides advanced security tools to keep you safe. Beyond that, each of these Android variants has tons of online documentation for you to dig into if you like. Each has their own FAQ, but we've put together an FAQ of our own that pulls together a lot of common questions across all three options. That link is in the notes, along with links to the home sites of each of the three recommended Android variants. Thank you for watching, and have fun with your new Android operating system.